There we go. Check two. Check two. Here we go. There's the parse. A couple of you on Magnetic Reversal News were a little upset that I left. So I figured I'd go live here for a few minutes and answer your questions on the live chat. So let's do it. Boom. Let's do it. Hello, Sarah. Hello, Wildflower. Mariam Youssef. 4 thumbs up. C. Marie. Tammy. Hello, Diamond. Guy Gossett. Hello, my brother. I'm doing well. Jerome. Hello. 2 Tim 3. Thumbs up, pray. Thumb peace. All right, so a couple of you were a little upset that I left so early on the volcanic update on the Reykjanes Ridge, southwestern Iceland. The imminent eruptions coming from the Pacific Northwest. The uptick at Rainier. The 6th paroxysm in 7 days at Etna. These were all predicted over 4 years ago when we began the channel. We told you this was all going to happen, and it's happening. And we also told you when it happened, we would report on it. So are there any lingering questions? Hello, Serenification, Bob, Belia, Fiam, Heart of Texas, the nexus of the Schmexus. Hi, everybody. The Daily Horn. So I just listened to a message I haven't heard. Lee Wilbarger, they shut his channel down. But when you stream other mainstream media channels, live streams, I mean, that costs tens of thousands of dollars to copyright. You are guaranteed to get taken down by YouTube. So there is a learning curve to have a YouTube channel, especially one that's been up for 5 years, 4 or 5 years. There is a learning curve. Mr. Bill Pops, peace be with you and also with you. Thank you, Jimbo. He says the best channel on YouTube, and I agree. Okay, first question. Diamond, is our wandering like our poles, or are you going boom like Etna? I have no idea what that means. Silver's like gold. But silver is not like gold. It's in fact going to outperform gold during the next year. But I didn't say that. Good evening, Al. I let Al out of his hole temporarily for this live stream, and I told him to be cordial. So keep him in check. The VEI of Etna on all of these paroxysms will be about 1 or 2. The VEI of Etna's paroxysms are 1 or 2. They could potentially get up to 3. In fact, paroxysm 5, in my opinion, is a VEI 3. It depends on the total output. The paroxysms are short-lived, so they only last for several hours. When most VEI 2 or 3 last for much longer periods of time, 10 hours or 14 hours. But the fact that they're ejecting material up into the stratospheric boundary where it pushes up onto the stratosphere and it spreads out suggests that these are VEI 1 or 2 and multiples. So it's happening again and again. So altogether, cumulatively, it could be VEI 3, the entire event. Now, this is going to add insult to injury in the Northern Hemisphere because all these particulates are up in the atmosphere. This is just after the extreme cooling in Texas, the nexus of the Schmexus, and our early spring into March already had models showing heavy blizzards in the first week of March. So this is just going to add to that weather effect using climatology. The climatology is the particulates in the atmosphere and the upper stratosphere and the lower stratosphere that will cause a little additional cooling. Even if a half a degree cooling can shift a weather pattern hundreds of miles north. So there's that. Okay, let me see what I missed. Al's not really a loser. Al Gore on our chat is not really Al Gore, by the way. He's too fat and busy peddling fake meat to ever be on our show. Any other questions? The best way to survive increased cosmic rays is not to live during increased cosmic rays. Cosmic rays travel through the planet. They travel through humans. There is almost no way to protect from them. But on the surface of the earth, obviously, if you're not in a home or you're not underground, you will be more susceptible to the rays. It's not just solar cosmic rays and galactic cosmic rays that we're worried about. And a lot of people have been talking about this for several years, that these are the two increases that are worrying. These are the two specific waves, cosmic rays specifically, that we know alter DNA. We also know that these cosmic ray flux events have changed evolution. Some people disagree with us, and it always takes 30 years for people to come up to speed with the current science. But what we do know is that it's just not GCRs and solar cosmic rays and galactic cosmic rays that we're worried about. The entire spectrum of radiation that is entering the earth increases. As the magnetosphere wanes, the spectrum increases. So that's UVA, B, and C all reaching the surface, and dozens of other types of radioactive materials that are raining down on us. That is the issue. It's just not cosmic rays. It's the entire radiation spectrum. As the magnetosphere wanes, we're more susceptible to skin cancers and other things. So as soon as the sun comes up, everyone has felt this in the last 5 years. The searing heat of the sun, it's not even that hot out, but when you're in the sun, it's burning your arm in your car or something like that. This will ever be increasing for the rest of your lifetime. It's going to decrease a little towards 2025, but it's going to increase after 2026 into the 2030 bottom, which will be hellstorm on wheels. And before that all happens, we have to deal with the sun waking up, solar cycle 25, solar flares, the destruction of our grid, and the weakening of several pockets around the planet. And then it's going to drop off again. 2026, 7, 8, 9, 30, 31, 32 will be the worst years on planet Earth ever seen since the Dalton-Maunder minimum. It's going to be worse than the Maunder once we get to the bottom of cycle 25. Simply because the magnetosphere is waning so quickly, it will add insult to injury to this grand solar minimum, unlike any we've seen since the Younger Dryas event. We're talking the dip down into the next glaciation. Okay, so that was long-winded, and I'm just going to scroll up here and see if I can find any more questions. Hey, Big Wheel. Eric Court. Paul Vennings. Have you heard of the town in South America that translates as the North Pole? No, I have not, Paul. But according to the work of Mario Build-Up Reps, the Earth has been slowly slipping every 100,000 years, and it's based on the Greenland pole position and megalithic structures, which would make a position in the South Pole plausible as the South Pole, not as the North Pole. So if there's an area in South America that translates to the North Pole, I wouldn't agree to that. I would agree to it as an ancient position as the South Pole, not the North Pole, Paul. That's all I got on that. People are waking up slowly and wondering why there is so much snow. Well, every 10 years, every solar minimum, there's a major snow event. But what we're seeing is an actual major snow event during this minimum that equates back towards the last grand solar minimum. In fact, the last Texas event translates to an 1899 event, which was a centennial minimum, which was like a moderate minimum, a grander of minimums. It was a low. It was a grand minima, not a super grand minimum or a solar grand minima in the 200-year frame. It was the 100-year time frame, but everything aligned there. So you have the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation, the Pacific, all probably coming together while the sun goes quiet, and you have a triple boom. So I don't think people will be wondering why there's so much snow in the future, because this information will get out. People need to write stories, and more people will understand how climate is cyclic. So what's the best way to survive increased cosmic rays? Don't go outside during the day for the rest of the radiation that's coming down. And that's not now. I mean, clearly now we can go outside, everything's fine. But maybe in 10 years, it will be a little more difficult. And we're just going to be waiting for that to see how the diminution of the magnetic field progresses. So we're going to be watching for that. Have you read the USGS report that says that Yellowstone will erupt? No, there is no USGS report that says Yellowstone will erupt on that date. It's fraudulent, Jerome. And every single person in the USGS has testified that Yellowstone is not erupting anytime soon. There's no evidence of that. There may be a hydrothermal event that could be coming, but there's no evidence of that either. There is normal, the lowest level activity ever recorded in Yellowstone is happening now. Even with an increase of other geysers going off, it's not an increase in overall activity. A hydrothermal area like Yellowstone, the heat moves around. So this area for a decade, and then it moves over here and it moves over there. And there's uplift and there's up and down all over Yellowstone. There is no evidence of any imminent eruption in Yellowstone whatsoever, no matter what anybody says. All of the scientists agree with exactly what I'm saying. The only people saying anything otherwise are not scientists, and they're idiots that are trying to get views, trying to get money on YouTube, period, Jerome. So drop it. As soon as there is I have the geologic background and come from field camps in the West. I know all about hydrothermal activity in volcanoes, and I've been on the money for years. So why would you think anything less, Jerome? Okay, moving on. Blue lenses, glasses, rock. So few will survive until 2060. People are dying right now from the cold in Texas, for goodness sakes. If they can't survive a small aberration for a few days in temperature, can you imagine when it actually gets cold, or it actually gets hot, or there's actually a volcanic eruption that darkens the sun? People are going to run around and stab their eyeballs out with broken glass. I mean, this is what we've been trying to prepare you for. It's going to be a shit show. It's not going to be anything fun. Proper prior preparation prevents piss poor performance in the future we're heading into. Anyone that thinks that Yellowstone is going to erupt is an idiot and should unsubscribe to my channel. Go home and stop fucking commenting, please. You can all suck it. And I already told you the science behind it. You just are beating like a dead horse, like Nibiru and all the other bullshit, like HARP, and that there is no space and the earth is flat. Go away, please. Okay? Thoughts on the moon tumbling across the horizon? No, this is just because idiots just started looking up at the moon and they think the moon is tumbling. The moon moves around on the Earth at angles very rapidly during the lunar cycle. It takes 17 fucking years for it to go through a cycle. So anyone that's watching the moon for the first time is going to be blown away. Oh my God, I can see shadows at night. The moon is so bright. It's turning upside down. Yeah, this is called, we know about every lunar position that's ever happened for 9,000 years, every single day. And the moment we would see a shift, we'll tell you. If you think you have seen a shift and you're completely clueless and you don't know how to Google, is the moon flipping? Well, you're the problem, not me. So stop asking me about the moon and the sun. The sun is now setting in the east. No, it isn't. You're the only person that has drank and smoked so much bath salts that you think that's happening. Now, let me just break this down for you in common sense. There are over 400,000 people that are regularly watching the sun and the moon every single day, and the stars. They're called amateur astronomers. And I guarantee that a single one of them would notice an aberration in the movement of these planets, the moons, or the stars. And I'm part of that. So as soon as we see something shift, strangely, we will tell you. Anyone else claiming something different than what we're saying is lying to you straight to your face. And if you continue to listen to those people, you're part of the problem. Oh, GG, whoever you are. I can't wait to hide you forever. And there you go. You're gone from the channel. So people that think the earth is flat and there is no space need to do more research. I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm saying that you're wrong, though. Because in order for a conspiracy that there is no space to be perpetrated, every single person that's called an astronaut would have to be put in a room and mind melded and kept up with that bullshit for their entire life until they died. These are people that actually got shot into rockets like monkeys when NASA themselves didn't know if they would live, that actually lived. So you should probably give some props to these heroes that are called astronauts before you claim that there is no space. Because, well, you just look like an idiot. So does anyone have any actual questions that I can answer before I go tonight? Yeah, it's the moon. Smart ass patriot. Yeah, the moon's going to take us out. The moon controls female hormonal activity. So if the moon goes crazy, we're all dead because every female on Earth is going to tear us apart. Trust me. Does anyone have any other questions about science that I can actually answer? Will the Earth land move during the reversal? Heart of Texas, that's a good question. And from the evidence I've seen, it only moves, in my opinion, every 100,000 year event. The last event was the Younger Dryas event where it moved, and we've gotten through that. So the Earth shouldn't move for over 80,000 years as far as crustal slip. Now, what might happen on these minor magnetic excursion events is that there might be extremely minor crustal slip, like 10 meters, maybe 100 feet, instead of a larger, whole kilometer or 50 kilometer slip. But if you just slip the crust of the Earth 10, 20 feet, you're going to get a major tsunami wash over most of the continents. All coastal regions will be destroyed anyway, and only the people above 5,000 feet will live. On a major event, if you're not above 12, 13,000 feet, you're completely washed away. And I think this is the flood of Noah. Now, some think the flood of Noah was just 6,900 years ago. It was the mid event, the halfway point between the major catastrophes at 12,009. And that could be possible. And that would mean that the NOAA event, which is a minor slip of maybe 30, 40, a kilometer, up to a kilometer. And what you would cause is tsunamis that are 6,000 feet high that would crash on the continents and eventually wash out towards the center. So there would be huge amounts of people that would survive, no one on the coast, unless they were in a boat. So this is what we're trying to unravel. And I think that the event we're going into is less of a crustal slip event and more of a cosmic catastrophe in the form of outburst, one side of the planet getting hotter than the other, and just people not knowing how to respond to a grid down scenario. If you take an entire population that is electric dependent, like we are in the information age, you're going to get a bunch of dead people real quick, and it's going to smell to high hell for months on Earth. That odor of rotting humans is going to whip around the planet. So it's not going to be a pretty place no matter what happens. But I do not think this event coming will have a major crustal slip. No, I do not. Vesuvius predictions. I have none, Kristen. Any volcano is fair game to blow as we deepen into the minimum. And there will always be warning signs, like we're showing you here in Iceland. There's extreme warning signs. And according to the historical data, the earthquakes swarm for thousands of quakes for up to a week before it even erupts. So there is a long warning period before a major boom. And we're going to pick up on it with the telemetry, the tiltimeters, everything that we have on the planet, the seismographs. We have over 30,000 seismographs on the Earth. We are going to pick up on the big event before it comes. And we're going to report on it, and then it's going to blow just like that. So that's how it is. Okay, I'll take 2 more questions, and then we're gone. I don't think there's a chain effect, Arnold. The Iceland volcanoes are at the mid-ocean ridge, which is where plates are spreading apart, and they go all the way down probably to the deep mantle. But what I think we're seeing is in these particular events, let me just give me a second. What I think is happening is that what we now know is that if this is the Earth, the cosmic rays come into the North Pole that cause the aurora. They also come into the South Pole. They heat the center of the Earth. So the first thing that happens during these big events is the center of the Earth heats to a maximum. That increases the mid-ocean ridge activity that we've been reporting on for 2 or 3 years, an uptick in mid-ocean ridge earthquakes. And what that means is there's increased spreading. So with increased spreading at the mid-ocean ridges, we should expect increased volcanic activity on the ridges, especially Iceland. We saw that back in the last solar minimum in 2010 in Iceland, a major volcanic event. I think it was VEI 3 or 4, shut down airline travel. We should see a bigger event during this uptick anytime soon. So first thing that happens is the center of the Earth heats from the increased cosmic rays slowly trickling in. This is ever increasing. Second thing that happens is during major cosmic ray outbursts, which is only during the magnetic reversal and deep minimums, silicious rich magma volcanoes heat. Those are the ones on cratons, the entire West Coast, the Pacific Northwest, the volcanoes that explode like Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, Mount Shasta. We saw Fuego, Popo. Those are the silicious rich magma volcanoes that will go boom. Etna is is midway between the explosive ones and, let's say, Mauna Loa or Iceland, which are the least explosive. So once we saw Hawaii go off, I would expect then, based on the historical patterns, Iceland to go off. And then after that, the big booms. And these are the silicious rich magma volcanoes like the Pacific Northwest, Fuego. We've already seen some of them blow, like Fuego. So we are now witnessing an ongoing event. It's not like categorical A, B, C. It mixes together. And that's why we're reporting on it. Science is brilliant and wonderful, and we learn every day. Antonio says, if Mount Rainier decides to go off, how quick do you think the powers to be are going to blame it on global warming? Antonio, 2 years ago, they already blamed volcanic eruptions on global warming. So it's already happened. So there's your answer there. No, don't wear a mask, please. Will you study the new Mars rover sharp ancient river waterbeds? Yeah, we'll definitely look at that. What do you think about the central and northern PA? Well, it's a great place to live. It's going to get very cold in the coming times. No different than where I'm living. Probably a good place to hunker down. There's a lot of mineral resources. There's underground caves with continuous burning coal, so you could probably keep warm. So not a bad place there. Edge Brand Agency. It won't be frozen in the next decade or two. I mean, it's just as cold as it ever will be. It'll just keep getting colder and colder. I mean, it'll probably take another 10 years for it to repeat what it was like in the 80s when you were getting 3-4 feet of snow all the time. But it's always better to look further south, Edge Brand Agency. Why wouldn't you? Just makes it a little easier. Now, the reason we put our homestead and our permaculture farm on the edge of the margin of the glacial extent is because in historical documentation going back 26,000 years, the place we're living gets extremely wet and moderates in temperature during extreme glacial periods or extreme cooling periods. It's the same thing we saw happen when Texas got cold. It got warm here and all the snow melted. So, and we're seeing an uptick. We've come off of a 10-year drought here, and now it's getting wetter. So we pick this area strategically for the long-term climatic shift that happens here. If you're on the edge of a glacier every summer, you're going to have massive rivers rushing off of it. And that's good for fish, good for spawning, good for crops, good for ionization, good for, swimming, whitewater rafting, and all the shit you want to do, as you get old. Japan will always see another big one. It's on a huge subduction zone. Yeah, there will be major radioactive material bleeding into the earth, into the oceans. Hiroshima almost saw a big one here. We just got by on a minor earthquake there. So of course it will happen. It's always happened. The keen edge. Now, this is interesting, Lando T. What kind of effects could the reversal have on gravity? I think it doesn't have any effect on gravity. What does have an effect on gravity is the size of the planet. So maybe when the dinosaurs were here, we were tiny. And now we're much bigger. And that's my only opinion on that. A magnetic reversal won't affect the gravitational constant on our planet based on any map I've seen. It will affect your survivability on the surface at all times, however. Etna and the Balkans. Well, the Earth, the weather moves around and around and around in the Northern Hemisphere. So, I mean, it will be a limited effect on the Balkans, just, like geoengineering. It's just geoengineering. So Etna blows, and then it could potentially rain or snow in the Balkans. And that's how it will work. So if we see record snow in the next week or two, we know what happens there. What? Ad-free? Become a patron for $1 a week for some knowledge and facts, no BS? Yes, reverse universe. The Alpine Fault. What was that one? Okay, where are we? There's a lot of good questions coming in now. The Alpine Fault in New Zealand is supposed to have an unzip event. Well, I mean, it's just a hypothesis, the same as the hypothesis on the New Madrid. Same hypothesis exists on the San Andreas. But the San Andreas, originally, what I was taught as a geologist is that all of the pressure builds up for like 70, 80 years, and then it goes, and it moves a lot. but the information coming out recently is that that's not what happens. There's lots of micro quakes that cause that long period of slow slip. And the long period of slow slip is what builds the pressure, and then it ruptures. Ah! So it's all a narrative that we're building on. What we do know is that major earthquakes happen at grand solar minimas. They happen at magnetic reversals, and that's now. So wait for it. Now we're not talking. We're talking 8 magnitude. A lot of them around the planet for over a 20-year period, like totally devastating. So, which is one of the reasons 3 years ago we told you to not live near major fault zones, because if you're there and that's the only place you can be and it happens, you will literally have to live in a nightmare for the rest of your life. So that's the problem there. Yellowstone, no Scott. We already covered that. The weather on the equator almost never changes, hasn't changed much for hundreds of thousands of years. There is always the potential for snow in the winter, but it will always be warm on the equator. So there's that. But in a pinch point of time, if after decades the whole planet is getting cold, where are all the people going to be? On the equator. So you're going to be living in a shit show. And we've been telling people for years that you're better in a more difficult place all alone with all the things you need than in a cushy place where disease, pestilence, and dumb fucks are everywhere stealing your shit. And that would be like Mexico, Ecuador, and Guatemala. Costa Rica, regions, it's going to be a shit show. Hawaii, you can't get off the island. So as soon as no ship comes in, everybody eats everybody else. And it's very bad. So a blessing, yes, it's wonderful, and you can stay on the beach. But as soon as someone hits you in the head with a rock and cooks you on the barbecue, well, it's a shit show. Yeah, you can grow rabbits. It's wonderful. Lucid Farms. Fukushima is a way bigger problem than any of us know. Not really, Kristen. You've been fed bullshit for 5 years with complete maniacs on the internet posting nonsense after nonsense after nonsense. There are thousands of nuclear plants all around the planet, and when the grid goes down, the same thing is going to happen to Fukushima. There will be a meltdown, but everyone will be safe if they're downwind, no, upwind, and not within 100 miles of the plant. So stay away from nuclear power plants. It's not as unsafe as you're gobbling up from these other sites. For decades, they've been saying, for 10 years since the meltdown, they're like, oh, we're all going to die from nuclear radiation. Not a single person on Earth has died of radiation poisoning from Fukushima from eating fish. So there's that, Kristen. And those are called facts. What effects are the new communications network on traditional weather patterns? Nothing. There's no effects on communication and weather. Humans can't affect weather, burning all the shit. We can't affect weather. You can affect weather using geoengineering in small areas. You can do cloud seeding, which will affect hundreds of square miles potentially, but in no way can you affect the climate. It's just too big a system. So, and electromagnetic frequencies, they barely affect the weather. People think that HARP affects the weather and they can use HARP to make storms. HARP is almost as useless as a cigarette lighter. So there's that. There's plenty of papers that people went out, scientists that were worried about this, and they proved that it's impossible to use HARP to affect weather. I mean, you could tweak it a very little bit, but the overall system will collapse on it and take over. How long would it take to fish Lake Michigan dry? Well, if you got a single net the size of Lake Michigan and pulled it across, about 8 hours. Staffers. Also, there are volcano seamounts along Cascadia. And if I think one erupts underwater and releases some pressure, it could set off subduction and rupture. That's probably not how it happens. Those seamounts have been erupting regularly. There's a lot of scientific papers that they erupt on a regular periodicity every 3 years. So they're regularly releasing pressure. Now, what will happen if a major rupture occurs is it will expose hundreds of seamounts that release pressure. David Dubine and I just did a video that the other day. We were talking for hours, and we pieced together some of that discussion. And what we both know is that after the New Madrid faulted in the early 1800s, there were sand volcanoes all over the ground after the fact. So after Cascadia ruptures, what you'd see is seamounts blowing up after the fact, huge amounts of pumice washing on shore to the Pacific Northwest, not the opposite. But if the opposite were to happen first, and we saw huge rafts of pumice coming up on the Pacific Northwest, I guarantee you that everyone there is dead in a few days. So that's the way to look at it. So there's that, yes. Yes, Al, it's hilarious. Okay, guys, it's been a pleasure. I got to get to bed. I'll do an update on Oppenheimer Ranch early in the morning. Probably put it together between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. It'll be up 9, 10 a.m. And then we go from there. We're finishing up the geothermal greenhouse first planter with galvanized steel. I'll show you how we're doing that. We'll do a video on that. We're finishing up the IBC aquaponic systems. The first one we'll be putting in. All the thermodynamics are being set. We're finishing up the barn dominium, and everything is pulling into place as we go forward. So proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance as we enter all this shit show. And it's been a pleasure for me to talk to you tonight for 36 minutes and 44 seconds. And become a Patreon. We have a new way you can support the channel for, I think, $1 a month on YouTube. You can become a YouTube member where you get a little special, I don't know, Greta Thunberg thing next to your head. And you get to do special dumb stuff. So there's that. We'll do another live stream soon. I hope this came out well. How many? Oh, I didn't even look. 270 people in here. I appreciate each and every one of you. 147 thumbs ups. Hello. And that's a boom. I love each and every one of you. I mean, I simply did the live stream because people were complaining that I was leaving too early. And I've been doing a lot of short videos. So this is just a chance to give back. Hope you got something out of the video. We love you guys. Peace. That's a boom.